Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Noise Brigade. I am Bobby, he is Tom, and we are bringing you more of the content that you crave.
Well, most everyone. I don't
Well,
know how well our wrestling podcasts, or at least the ones that we do that are wrestling themed, go over. But we're going to talk about it anyway, but not the
yeah,
whole time.
yes,
Just a little blurb up front. You pitched a great idea on this one a little earlier to me, and I think we're going to have a great conversation. But before we get into that, kind of the hot topic that we wanted to do up front here is, man, more releases. WWE. What do you got?
more releases. The Bollywood boys, um, but the big ones to me, and not to slight anybody that was released, there was like 17 people, but the big ones that stuck out to me, and I'm sure to you, were Fandango, because you got to let the A's breathe, and Tyler Breeze, the face of NXT. And man, I'm bummed.
Yeah, I it was funny. Between you and Danielle basically simultaneously sending me messages that Tyler Breeze was released because you both know that I'm just like one of his biggest fans. I was really bummed about that. But unfortunately, it's one of those things like I could see coming.
Right.
Um, both those guys were, I'm not going to say they were floundering back in NXT, but not a whole lot going for them. So I think the thing that really strikes me is that both of those guys in particular, wow, just the talk about Fandango being over. Remember the WrestleMania bit with the whole dance,
Right.
and now here we are. He's out.
Yeah, and his theme song had actually gone to #1 on iTunes. Like,
That's right.
this
Yep.
isn't somebody that, and beyond that, these guys are both way over. They both are talented in-ring performers, and WWE wasted them because they have no idea what they're doing creatively. And so two more guys, along with Aleister Black and countless others, who've been released because WWE can't get its head out of its ass.
Right. And the other one I just saw that was released too, and this has really surprised me. Not that I have followed closely, and I think I've made a point to say that many times as we've been doing these. But the tag team Ever Rise from NXT was released, and I was like, wow, that's crazy. Because I, not that I've been watching, but every time I at least see that there's a show that's going on, I at least try to, read the results and, kind of see what happened. And it seemed like they were about on every other show, and it was like I thought they were getting quite a push, and all of a sudden, just there goes the rug.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's crazy, but enough enough of the wrestling. I think hopefully people didn't tune out.
yeah,
But
we didn't run people away for the first 3 minutes there, but you had a great idea here. So what are we gonna do here? This is such a fun idea to me.
so we're gonna do a worst list. Everybody does their best lists. Everybody's like, oh, this is my top 10 favorite of blah blah blah. I being the person that I am, looking at the worst of things. Not to say that I'm a pessimist, but I think it's fun to rag on stuff sometimes. And so, what actually brought this up was I had sent you a link to some god awful, hideous rims that for some reason I really loved, probably because they were purple, and for whatever reason I'm a mark for anything that's purple. Um, Maybe because of the Dark Order. Oh, so you got some more wrestling in there. But anyway, I'd sent you these rims, and I was like, man, yeah, if I had the money and my car wasn't the color it is, I would definitely buy these and throw them on there. Which got me to thinking of what's the worst car modification that someone's done, like the stupidest modification, and which got me to think of what is the worst thing that we've ever done to a vehicle. And then it led me down this rabbit hole of this whole list. I've got 10 things here of what is the worst in 10 different categories. So, I mean, since the cat's out of the bag, we might as well start with that. What's the worst vehicle? I'm going to open it up to vehicle modification you have ever done to a vehicle.
Okay, so this was a tough one. Is that you mentioned this question to me, and I really had to think about this one because I'll be honest with you, there wasn't a whole lot that I've ever really done. I've done, early on, I would replace like interior lights. I had a red Pontiac Sunbird, so everything to me had to be red. So I replaced all the interior lights that had to be red. Whenever I'm 18 years old, I think that looks so cool. you know. But I can't say that that's the worst necessarily. If I really thought about it, and then really, you know, reflecting on something that sounded really cool, and maybe it does still sound cool, but I had that 1997 Pontiac Grand Prix, and I had it in my head that I was going to put Flowmasters on it. You
I
know,
remember that.
not a real dual exhaust. It was the kind of split back, and it had
Yeah.
the two mufflers on it. But I was like, I was bound and determined. So put the Flowmasters on it, and did it make it sound pretty cool? Yeah, it did. But it was still a 1997 Pontiac Grand Prix with a V6 in it. So
Dude, it's so funny you say, like, everything you said I can relate to so much. First of all, I remember both of those vehicles. Um, and I remember when you put the Flowmasters on it. And I was thinking about putting an exhaust on my Taurus that I just got. Um, and that, that was one of the things I was thinking about, because it's a 3.5 liter V6, you know. But I'm like, I want this thing to sound like it's got some teeth. But I think if I'm going back to my worst modifications that I've ever done to a vehicle, um, it's probably a tie. Um, and I mean, you could always look at when I had what was it, a 2001 Mustang, and I cut away part of the shrouding on the the air the air box to open it up and get more air to the filter, which was stupid. Um, then there was when I had the 85 Reliant K. I think it was an Aries, and it had a broken piece of fiberglass. So I got out the drill and I got out the zip ties, and I, instead of like actually putting it back together, I zip tied it back together. So that was pretty bad too. But I think what takes the cake is that I was older than you when I did this. Um, so Brooks and I had decided that we were going to put neons all over our cars. And this is when I had
Oh God, I remember this.
I had my 96 Monte Carlo, which shared a platform with the Lumina. Um, and so I took my 96 midnight green Chevy Monte Carlo and got a whole bunch of neon green lights and neons and put them all over the interior. I couldn't find an actual neon light for the cabin light, so I got these little gel things and put them over the I put the gel things over the lights on the cabin light and
Uh-huh.
did that. I had the lights set up to pulse to the music, so if there was any kind of bass, pulse. And you could turn that off, you could adjust it, you could turn it off, but I was dumb, and I even had neon pedal covers. So not replacing the pedals, but these things slid onto the gas and the brake pedal and lit up neon.
Which is, if anything about driving, that's the safest possible thing, is to put something that would slip on or off of your brake and or accelerator.
Yes, exactly. So I mean, that part didn't last very long. That I got sick of real quick. Like the first time I went to put my foot on one of the two, and it either slid or did whatever, because I was in the Air Force at the time, and so I was wearing boots when I was driving a lot, and I seem to remember my foot slipping off of the pedals, and so that quickly came to an end. But the lights inside stayed until somebody sat on in the passenger seat and popped one of the neons. And so at that point, I was like, you know what? All right, I guess let's take this stuff out. So it lasted maybe 3 months, I think, before I ripped everything out. That, like, I think it was like, oh God, I don't even remember. It was an embarrassing amount of money that I spent. Like, it was definitely in the triple digits. It wasn't like $500 or anything crazy like that, but I'm pretty sure it was like around $100 to $200 that I spent on stupid neons for my car.
And it's hysterical because I still see him occasionally, done really well too. I think just not that I would ever have anything like it, but I see some vehicles driving around here, and it's like, the right kind of neon in the right spot, on a vehicle, especially at night, kind of that cool effect.
Yeah.
But then it's funny to me because like to this day and age in GTA 5, that's still one of the big like car mods you can do is put all those lights on your vehicle. So
Really? Yeah, you got
this
to make it look
cracks
like
me
a
up.
UFO. It's
Yeah, yeah. That just cracks me up. So, all right. So, car mod, that's a good one. What's next?
all right. So, what's the worst vehicle you've ever owned?
It's kind of a tough question for me. Mainly because most every vehicle I've had has been half decent. I will say this. I'm going to give you. I can't say it was the worst, but I'll say most disappointing. And I'll get a little maybe nerdy and a little technical on it, but whatever. So I had a 2008 Ford Fusion. It was one of the first, generations of that car. But it was to me, I wanted it because it was, I believe, the first or second year that it had the Microsoft Sync system.
Okay.
So, when I got the car, I think it was a year old when I got it. And so I thought it was the coolest thing that I could talk to my car and have it play music, back 2009 ish.
Right.
So I was like, this is awesome, and the other thing too is even back then the Ford Fusion was heralded for having this like awesome gas mileage. So I was like, no, I'm in it. I've got this like high tech car, awesome gas mileage. I'm starting to do the numbers on it, and I was not breaking like 23 miles a gallon. And I'm like, what is going on with this thing? And I say, yeah, it might not sound too bad, but I had just gotten rid of a 2003 Impala with a big V6 in it where I could routinely get 31, 32 miles a gallon.
Oh, no kidding.
So I'm like, yeah, I got all this cool like tech stuff that I can kind of like be nerdy about. But yeah, I was so disappointed. And like I said, not a bad car. I'm not saying that it was terrible. I've been really, really lucky with what I've had over the years. Not that I've ever owned like Lamborghinis or anything like that.
Right. Right.
But you know, I just got really lucky. But I would say to me that was like for that year of car. And the other thing too, I Google it, look up a beige 2008 Ford Fusion. Ain't much to look at. I mean, it's so it was very basic. Again, I don't have worst on it. I'm not completely hating on it, but it just, if I think of every other vehicle I've had, because you have to think like I've got my 16 Colorado Z71, as Danielle has kind of given me the name. It's like what they call a murder truck because it's all blacked out and
Nice.
looks like it's from the zombie apocalypse. And before I had that, I had the '09, G8 GT, which was one of my dream cars. So I've had a couple of really nice vehicles in there, and then it's like I think back and I'm like, yeah, that Fusion certainly doesn't stack up to like the G8. So,
All right.
so how about you, man? You already mentioned you had a K car though. So
Yeah. Well, all right. So the K car I bought for like $100, I think. It was like $100 or $200, and I bought it to fix it up and sell it. Because the woman who owned it, she was an older lady. She was just trying to get rid of it. She didn't drive it anymore, and she just wanted it gone. And then when I got it on 55 and couldn't do higher than, I think it was 35 or 40, I realized why she really made out on that deal. But it was like a 1985 Dodge Aries. I'm not gonna count that one because that was literally just bought to sell, and it was what it was. Um, if I'm gonna go one of two ways with this. And I know I
okay,
said this is supposed to be like the one definite worst, but and I'm not following that, but I've me, you know my luck with cars. Um, so I've got two. I've got two. Um, the first one is going to be the very first brand new car I ever bought. And it was I want to, God, I can't remember. It was either 2003 or 2004. I think it was 2003 Chevy Monte Carlo. Um, I got it. I actually picked out the only thing I didn't get that I wanted with it was I didn't get the color that I wanted. I wanted that burnt orange, that like rusty burnt orange color.
yeah, yeah,
I love that color for some reason. Um, but I got it. I got it from my uncle's dealership. He had it like shipped to his dealership. I bought it brand new, and I really, really liked it. And the car itself wasn't disappointing. What was disappointing with it was after I think it was 20,000 miles or 25,000 miles, the engine went.
Oh, geez.
And that wasn't like me beating the piss out of it on in like city driving or anything like that. That was me driving it back and forth to McGuire. So that was the majority of the time I drove it. It was highway miles, and I took it in, and because I it started backfiring, and it lurched when I was on 95. And I'm like, what is going on? And then so I took it in, and it was in the shop more than it was out when I had it, and it was
So basically,
brand
a
new.
lemon
Yeah.
almost.
So what I ended up doing was I ended up taking it, and they ended up replacing the engine for free. But in the meantime, I kept on having to rent cars, so that was screwing me over. And I mean, they were giving me awesome car. What sucked is they were giving me cars that were like infinitely better. Like at one point, I had like a Cadillac Coupe de Ville or something like that, and I had a they gave me a GMC Canyon at one point, or a Chevy Colorado or something that I really liked. And so I ended up at that point, I was like, you know what, man, this car's in the shop way too often. It's making me miss work, because it was like there were days when I kept on having to call out. I'm like, well, why are you calling out? I'm like, well, I don't have a car to get to work. Didn't you just buy a brand new car? Yes, I did, and it's in the shop again. And they all thought I was lying, but it was the truth. So I traded that one in and got this Mustang. And in my haste in buying the Mustang, I ignored a hiss that kept on happening when I would hit the brakes. Just because I wanted the car, and I thought, oh, it must be some kind of special feature on this sports car, because I was a friggin' idiot. It turns out it was an issue with the brake lines.
Oh,
And
geez.
so a few years, or not even a few years, a few months into having the car, I kept on having issues where the calipers would freeze onto the rotor. And so the brake pads would wear out, the rotors would wear out, and I couldn't pass inspection with it. And I kept on taking it to the mechanic, and the mechanic kept on fixing the brake lines, and apparently couldn't figure it out either, but it was the master cylinder was bad.
Mm.
And so what it did is, I don't know if you're familiar or not. Well, I'm sure you've seen it because you worked at the auto body shop, or at the auto mechanic. But those Mustangs had steel brake lines. And what it was doing is, because the master cylinder was bad, it was collapsing the brake lines. So no fluid was getting through, and that's what was causing the calipers to seize up.
Oh,
So
yeah,
I'd
that,
say,
yeah. Oof, yeah, that's not good.
yeah. So those would be my two, big regrets as far as cars that I've owned.
All right, so we've done some cars here. Do we have any other car ones, or what do we got?
Let's move on from cars. Let's go to jobs.
All right,
The
so why don't you do
worst-
this one first?
Okay, so the worst job. So this one, man. So, I, all right. So when I worked at the hospital, I wouldn't say it wasn't necessarily the worst job, but there was a portion of it that was really bad. Um, they decided they wanted me to work in the OR at one point, and when I was working in the OR, one of the first days that I was working there, they made me go down. They thought that they sewed a sponge into a guy's leg that they just amputated. He was a diabetic, and he had his leg amputated from below the knee down. Um, and they thought they left a sponge sewn up in his leg stump. And so they couldn't find it, and they made me go down to the morgue and dig through the guy's leg and look for the sponge.
uh,
Followed up by, one of the things we had to do as transport orderlies for the OR was, if people needed to have surgery and they needed to be shaved beforehand, we had to do that. So another one of the first few days I worked there was shaving a guy's private region,
mm-hmm.
balls and all. So needless to say, I didn't end up staying in that position too long, because that was just, between digging through a leg and then having to shave some dude's nut sack, I was out.
Yeah, it takes a special heart to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So So I would say
What?
that was probably the worst job. I mean, I worked at Kmart briefly, and I worked at Toys R Us for like a Christmas season for maybe like 6 weeks or so. I worked there with Ewan, um, but I'd separated my shoulder, and they had me out gathering carts with one arm in the snow.
Eh.
And I was like, you know what? It snowed on Christmas Eve, and they wanted me to come in anyway, and I just didn't show up. It was the only job I ever just didn't show up to. So I guess you could throw that in there too. Oh,
So,
and we had to clean up poop off the floor.
oh, that's not good.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, no, it's again, it's funny. It's funny thinking about these things. It's like how mundane of a life have I led on certain things. But no, anyone that knows me knows that I worked at a gas station and an auto shop for many, many years as my first job, but I just somehow um, kept it for really about 6 years, which is insane to think about. Um, I was still in high school when I started that, and I absolutely love doing that. For a brief time, I worked in a record store. Who wouldn't want to love that?
Oh, dude, yeah.
I did that for a year. And I didn't. Probably the worst thing about that was I didn't make any money. But outside of that, I've worked in my current job. This is my 15th year.
Nice.
And I've also done part-time college teaching for the last 10 years, going on 11. So it's like I've had these very consistent things, but I do recall very early on, I would take these side roles of teaching summer school. And it wasn't through where I work now, but it was through one of our, and we're in our state, we have like regional offices that would oversee certain programs, or at least they did. So many, many years ago, the one that we had, which is no longer existent, got rolled into another one, oversaw summer school. And, it was fine because I was like, I'm brand new, I'm fresh into this. And I get, I have my math background. So I'm doing summer school for people that are trying to recover high school math credits. And I just get stuck with a really, really hard class, 17 students that were just, I just, it was insane. It was so bad that I had to get the guy that was running the program. I was like, look, you won't believe this. And he comes in and he sees, I can't get any details. I don't really, even though it's many years ago and I'm being vague about it enough as it is, I still don't want to like divulge too much.
Right.
But he comes in, and after I finally coerced him, I was like, well, you have to sit down and check this out because this is nuts. And he comes in, he sits down for a couple hours, and after the class ended, he comes up to me. He's like, Tom, I'm really, really sorry. And so I had to proceed to do it for like another 3 weeks. Well, fast forward a little bit, and of these 17, and again, I'm not, making light of this or making ill this. This might just like kind of show like, kind of the crop of clientele that I was dealing with over the first 3 years or so. After that, like 5 of them came up on the inmate list of the local jail. So,
ooh, okay.
yeah. So and it's one of those things. Like I said, I can't say that I absolutely hated that experience. I think it molded me as I got moving forward into my career. But I certainly didn't enjoy it.
Right.
I don't know that I could do it again. And I realize, even though I'm still in education, and I still teach college, and I still occasionally it's been a long time. I'm still in the classroom, and I still go in and out of classrooms. It's not like I don't do that. I just don't, have the, everyday teaching type thing going. But it's just one of those experiences. It's like, wow, it was, kind of hard to think about that. It's like, well, you made it, but, oof, I don't know that I'd do it again.
Right. So you know what? As you were saying that, I I started having some flashbacks. There's a job I completely forgot about that I had that probably takes the cake. Um, Even beyond cleaning up crap and cleaning up, and all that stuff. Uh, and I actually worked there. Oh no, I didn't. I worked there right before you guys came down here in um 20 the first time you guys came down.
Yeah, we were down there 2012, almost 10
Yes.
years ago. Yeah.
So I worked for have you ever heard of a company called Aaron Sales and Lease?
How's it spelled? Is it
Aaron.
Aaron? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. I know
So
Aaron. Yep.
so I was doing what I thought was just going to be like a store manager role, like an assistant store manager. Little did I know when I got there, I was actually running collections. And the area that I had to run collections in, I've ran it in Cape Coral where I live now, but I also had to run it in North Fort Myers, which we drove through North Fort Myers and I showed you Suncoast.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I had to do most of my collection work. And I got threatened with violence, got threatened to be killed, got all kinds of threats and stuff when I would do that. And I ended up quitting like maybe 4 or 5 months in. 4 months. 4 months I lasted doing that. So that was
Yeah, that's not fun. No thanks.
and the worst one of the worst things I ever had to do in my life was at that job. And it was on Christmas Eve. I was driving around banging on people's doors demanding money. And we had to go to somebody's house. And while their kids are standing there, repo the kid's bed.
Oh,
And here's the worst part about it. The parents there, and we had offered the parents a deal where and here's what they did. They had a big TV, a big screen TV, and they had the kid's bed. We offered them a deal where they could get just a bit smaller TV and a different bed, and we would work with them. They said no. They kept their TV and they gave up the bed for the kids. And the
ugh.
kids are asking us as we're taking it, Mister, why are you taking our bed? That was
Oof.
friggin' heartbreaking.
Yeah, that's
So, all right. So yeah, now that we've got that out of the way and driven off the rest of our listeners, speaking of buying and such, what is the worst impulse buy you've ever made?
Yeah, this is always a hard one because I have the tendency to be impulsive at times. Um, and this is a tough, thing. Because I always try to be practical with things, even though I'm a collector, or I was a collector of like baseball cards and these different things. I kind of stopped doing that because I transitioned into like beer. So that's a whole nother conversation for another day. But if I were to like honestly, really kind of sit there and was like, the worst thing, and I'm thinking about this like, you know, prospectively from how much money I spent on it to like how much I actually used it. Um, and this is gonna sound kind of funny because it was one of those things that I was like insanely excited about initially, and I was ready to just dump everything I had into it and do it. But and I've mentioned this before on the podcast. I'm not gonna say this is like the absolute worst, but it's something that just sits there and collects dust. Is my PS4 VR headset. And I say this because at the time I bought that whole setup and I turned around and bought a PS4 Pro just for that. Headset has not done anything in the last 18 months. I get sick playing it and it just doesn't do anything for me, So it's
Right.
like I spent I was with, if I count the PS4 Pro, I was probably into this like right off the bat, like $800. Just like boom, I'm doing this, and I play a few minutes of a few games, and I'm like, uh-oh, and I'm not feeling so hot, and it's like, and I never bothered because, you and I have always chit chatted about, I'm trading this game in or I'm doing this. I, I probably should have, but I didn't. It just sits there and collects dust. Maybe it'll be worth something in a museum one day or whatever. But now I just it's funny because I spent all that money and like it was straight up impulse. Like I mean, like went to Best Buy, threw it all in a cart, boom, done. You know, here you go. Here's my credit card. Let's do it. And it was like for me, it was a cool novelty for like a month. And it was just like couldn't play it anymore. Kids picked it up occasionally, but like I was pretty adamant about them not touching it at the time because I didn't know how it would make them feel.
Right,
and
right.
And Tommy was frankly too young at the time too. Um, to really, you can't even really fit. It won't even really fit on his head because he was so little. But yeah. So again, all time worst, probably not. I could think of 100 other things but like for things that I have to sit there and stare at every day that just collects dust, and I know I put a lot of money into, that's got to be it.
All right. So what's funny is mine is the same thing.
Are you serious?
Yes. So a
Ah.
couple years ago, I actually got the Gran Turismo pack. It was on sale. I got the Gran Turismo pack. I got it. I had no intention of playing Gran Turismo because I drive a car. I don't need to play virtual reality to drive a car. Um, so I got that, and I forget there were a couple games coming out that I was really into, and I was like, dude, I gotta get these. Like Doom was one of them. Um, Doom, the Batman game, the Iron Man game, um, and something else. And I was like super excited about them. And I got I forget which games I got, but I got a couple games. I got it. I got it home. I tried it, and I had the same situation. I ended up getting sick from playing it. I'm like, this is not good. But unlike you, I had no tolerance for it at all, and I didn't want Peyton to be messing with it because I was like, because like you said with Tommy, Tommy was too young to really be messing with it. Well, Peyton was too young at the time to be messing with it, so I was just like, you know what, screw it. I'm tired of looking at it because it pissed me off that I got it with all these high hopes, and you at least have more tolerance for that than I do, and I was just like, you know what, screw it, I'm done, and I ended up selling it to somebody at work for like half of what I bought it for.
Yeah, I don't know. I have a really weird thing with video games, and it's funny too because I sold or traded in a ton of stuff early on. All the stuff that's probably actually worth something, I don't have anymore. But pretty much anything from like the previous generation or even the system before, like maybe like the PS, 3, 4 time frame up. There's games that I bought, I played for like an hour. They just sit and collect dust for me. I don't turn them back in. I don't know why. I just hold on to them.
Well, because you've seen what happened when you get rid of stuff. And if I was smart, I would be that way too, but I'm not smart. Um, so
I don't know. I think it's just I'd like to think something's going to be worth something one day, but then I think part of it's just sheer laziness too. And I'm like, and then I had over the years tried to like throw things on eBay or whatever, you know, and to get like $3 or something, it just takes too much effort for me to like put it in the mail
right.
for nothing
No,
basically.
absolutely.
So,
Honestly,
all right.
that's I've been going through my closet trying to get rid of stuff, and I'm like, I'm just too lazy to put it on eBay.
Yeah. So if I'm going to make a, few bucks, then I will, but yeah, $2, $3, it's just not worth it. All right. So that's pretty funny. We had the worst on that. So what's the next one?
So let's stay in that same vein. Let's go. What's the worst video game that you've ever purchased?
What do you got on this one? I want to hear yours first, since we had the same thing on this last one.
So honestly, I don't really have I don't really have an answer for this one off the top of my head that jumps out at me. What I will say is um the only one that really that if I think about it right now off the top of my head, I'm gonna say Sonic Heroes. Um, for well, that was on. Yeah, I got that for GameCube, but I think that was when I had Xbox, or that's when I had the original Xbox, PS2, and GameCube all together. And I think I just happened to buy it for GameCube, but it came out on all three, I believe. Um, and it was just a broken mess. It was supposed to be such a good game. It was supposed to be the return to form for Sonic, but it was three characters running in a triangle, and I kept on falling through the levels. So that kind of, put a damper on the gameplay aspect for me. Um, Aside from that, I can't really think of. I'm trying to think if there's been anything recently that I've just been like, oh God, I can't believe that I'm actually playing this. Um, but nothing's really popping to mind. I'm sure that, if I gave this, if I would have gone through the history of my gaming, I'm sure I could come up with something much worse.
Right.
But that's the one that pops to mind when I think of the worst video game that I've ever bought, because that was a day one purchase for me too. That
Yeah,
wasn't
that
something that I like was just like, oh, I guess I'll grab this.
yeah, and that things like that kind of sting a little bit more too, because you're all excited. It comes out and it's like, ooh, wasn't what I expected.
No, you know what? Okay, no, I've got it. I've got it. What's the worst video game I've ever played? NFL football for the NES.
NFL football for the NES. I don't remember ever playing that one.
So NFL football for the NES, I bought in West Virginia it was either a flea market or a yard sale. We were in West Virginia visiting family when I was a little kid, and I bought this game for $5, and it hurt my soul when I got home and played it. I was looking forward to it so much, dude. I was so stoked about this game. I was like, all right, cool. I got NFL football, NFL football. I got home. It was a zoomed out, like you're looking at the stadium from the blimp above the stadium. Okay. You can see all the players. You can't tell really what they are. They're just almost like dots. Like you're almost better off playing that 70s Tiger electronic football where it was all just LED lights. Like, that was more enjoyable than friggin' NFL football for the NES.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah, all right. So this was a funny one because I always think about, everyone always talks about like, most famous, like really bad video games. But this was obviously one before our time. And I'm not saying this is one of mine, but like prospectively, E.T. for the Atari, right?
Oh, I loved that game.
Yeah. And this is the funny thing. People dump on that game so bad, but it's one of those things, and I'm not going to say that I'm one way or the other on it, but sometimes you get those really bad video games that are they're so bad, people like to play them. It's like watching the movie's terrible.
Yes.
And it's rated really bad, or it's supposed to be bad, but it's like it's still enjoyable anyway,
Right.
in that same vein. Now, I have the feeling sometimes, though, because this is just how my mind operates, is that the opposite effect happens sometimes. So, like a game that everyone loves or the critics rave about, I think sometimes you're just not into. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and I'm not saying that it's a bad game, but like on a personal level, I think sometimes it's just like, you know what? This just isn't what I expected. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
That's kind of the approach I'm taking this. I'll probably get a ton of hate for this, but it is what it is. So and again, I've made mention this many times over talking about this. But I love, Skyrim, and I love Breath of the Wild, and I love those type of games.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
So I bought, I don't know, maybe I bought The Witcher 3 for the Switch.
Oh, no, I didn't see where you were going with this.
I tried playing that for a couple hours. I do not like it at all. I don't care for the mechanics, and maybe it's just a Switch. Maybe if I played it for anything else, I would have liked it.
Okay.
But I've played Skyrim on the Switch and it's fine. And obviously Breath of the Wild is only on the Switch.
Right.
So I thought, well, if this game's even half of what I'm reading it to be, this has got to be a fun play for me because, you know, I don't like the mechanics. I spent all the money for the complete edition.
Oh no.
I, that's another one that's out there for like literally played it for 2 hours and haven't touched it since. It just made me that mad. Like I didn't like it. I got so because I got so mad because it's like I read so many good things about it, and this is like right up my alley. And then it's like I played it, and maybe I was just in a mood, or maybe it was like there's been an update since that fixed whatever I had wrong with it. But I didn't care for it. I just thought it was goofy to play, and yeah, I was like, nope. I just no, and I'm not saying that's the worst video game I've ever played. I'm not saying that, but as far as in terms of like thinking recently and thinking about a genre that I really, really like, um, yeah, that comes to mind, and I'm like, nope. So,
Okay.
where did you think I was going to go with this?
I thought you were gonna go Fallout.
So this is funny. I almost did. My thing is, um, I played Fallout 3. I think it was that on the 360?
Yeah, that was on 360 and PS3.
Okay. So I played Fallout 3 on the 360 and I really liked it enough to where I bought Fallout 4 for the PS4. I'm not going to say I completely hated that game, but I stopped playing it because I got stuck and I just don't feel like playing it anymore. And then I feel like restarting it. And I was like, this is just too hard to live. Like, I don't like games like that. I'm not going to say I would just like enjoy games that are easy. I'm not saying that at all.
Right.
But I also need it to be somewhat enjoyable and where I can progress, and not have to do the same things over and over and over again, just so I can like try to leave to get some water. Like, just
no, dude, I get it.
just yeah.
But I'm glad you mentioned The Witcher because I was actually looking at that. So now maybe I'll lay off of that.
I mean, I'm saying you might love it, and like I said, I could have just been in a mood, but if I'm comparing it, and again, I'll probably get a lot of crap for anyone that, happens to be a huge fan of that game. But you know what? That's the whole thing. That's why you're allowed to have an opinion.
Right.
But all right. So out of that one, so what do we got next?
So let's go to one that I'm sure is going to piss some people off because I think we're pretty big music snobs. Let's swing into the musical area of things and let's go. Who's the worst band that you can think of?
I know who yours is because you threw a CD at somebody with it.
Sadly, they've been overtaken.
Okay. All right. So, this is another tough one because I try to be very open-minded about my music. But I think everyone takes the easy road on this and like, oh, Nickelback or even Creed, I think is almost kind of a Nickelback territory these days.
Two of the ones I was thinking of.
Yeah, I mean, it's and it's funny. I say Creed probably is it for me on the sheer fact that like I saw him in concert. It's funny. Occasionally they'll pop up through my autoplay lists, and I'm like, I just can't listen to it. Like there's just nothing there for me. But I can't say that like back when I bought the seat, like one of their albums when it came out, that it was like a bad purchase, because like I really liked it at the time.
Yeah.
I was into it, but it's the same thing. When I was 7, I was in the MC Hammer. You know what I mean? Like it's people change over time on that. But I will say there's, the Nickelback and Creed jokes aside, I don't know. I guess that's kind of a way and decide, like, pick your poison.
Right.
If I really were to kind of sit there and hone in on, I just, can't dig, certain things. So, and I'm not going to say this will be the surprise for everybody. So I'll go with the Nickelback and Creed thing for band, but I want to say, I'm going to hone this down a little bit and say song.
Okay. Well, that's the next
Okay,
Question.
well, I'll answer that my part. Then you go do band and song.
Okay.
Even though I kind of stole your band already.
Yeah. Thanks, Dick.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So song comes from my all-time favorite band has produced my least favorite song of all time.
Really?
So you know that I'm a huge Beastie Boys fan.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I love about everything they do or have done. So much so that like I have this insane collection of live albums and bootlegs and whatever. But that song "Girls" drives me up the wall so hard. Yeah,
That's amazing.
by far my least favorite song by any band, and that's my favorite band.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's
So
fantastic.
yeah.
So,
All right, what do you got?
so I feel cheap taking Creed or Nickelback. And honestly, here's the thing. So I can't believe I'm actually going to put this to record, but Creed, I say that they're a terrible band because, you know, the songs are so sanctimonious and so like whatever. And again, I'm like you. I went and saw them in concert. I've seen them in concert twice. I had a t-shirt. Actually, the day I signed my contract to go into the Guard, I was wearing a Creed t-shirt.
That's dedication.
Right? So and here's the thing, honestly, without what's his face that was the lead singer,
Scott Stapp.
yes, Scott Stapp. Without him, I really like them as Alter Bridge. I think they're fantastic. You know, they do Edge's theme song.
Yep.
And I bought that album because they're actually really good. So I'm gonna cross Creed off the list. Nickelback, as much as I hate to admit it, they've got a couple good songs. They're just so bland and generic at everything they do. They don't excel at anything. And because I want to keep this to bands, I'm not going to, I would say Justin Bieber or like any of the mumble rappers, but we're keeping this to bands. So I'm going to make a really, really unpopular pick. And this one's probably going to this one might actually get us kicked off of the internet. 311.
Wow, really?
So here's the deal. There's some 311 songs I really like. There's like I've bought 311 albums, but just overall, man, I'm not a 311 fan, and I've seen them in concert, but I can't get into them as much as everybody gets into them.
No, that's cool. You know what? I think that's what makes this so fun to talk about. It's because yeah, no, that's cool. Like I completely get it. It's funny. You remember the Surf Mall in Ocean City?
Yeah.
And this always cracked me up because Jersey had a big ska scene in the late '90s, and the Surf Mall used to sell those posters of shows that had already happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget, they had this one, and it was labeled off as a punk ska, and it had No Doubt and 311 on it.
What?
And I was
No Doubt I get.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a stretch, but 311, I was like, what? Like the pop alt rock band, like
right.
The rappers, they were a bit different. They weren't, just in a, whatever, to try to like compartmentalize people. But I was like, that's not ska.
No Doubt's first few albums were truly ska.
Yeah, but not in 1996. That's what the actual poster said, which I was like, what is going on here? Like maybe they were referring to their previous material.
Yeah.
But that point, No Doubt had already been mainstreamed on the radio. So it was like,
Was that after Yeah, that was after Tragic Kingdom,
mm-hmm,
wasn't it?
mm-hmm. Yeah,
They,
that's what I
I
thought
mean,
was crazy about that.
they were still
So
slightly ska. You know what?
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, like I said, it was there to me, and I only say they were more of a stretch because they had these, this is the reason why I say this, was because I remember seeing this stuff in like 98, 99,
Gotcha.
because
Okay.
they had all this stuff from like these shows, because they had these reprint posters from like Jimi Hendrix too. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
Right.
but like to see a show that said that, and and I certainly understood it, and I understand it now, but to be so heavy into the scene at the time, because I'd go up to North Jersey and go to ska shows all the time,
Right.
and like Toasters and all these guys that were like, to me, like legit ska,
Right.
and but to see like a 311 on it just cracked me up.
Dude, so you know what? And that made me think, when you mentioned the Surf Mall and those posters and stuff, made me think about another band that, even though there was a time when I was really into them and I bought their stuff, thinking back, it's so awful for the most part. And it's awful because of how much they changed from, because and thinking about No Doubt made me think about this. There's an album where there was a massive, massive hit in the 90s off of it. And it was the only song on the album that sounded like that. And every other song was like metal / alternative / punk. And they were actually played on the Headbangers Ball before this song happened, and took them and took them to another level. And can you guess what band it is?
Not off the top of my head, I've got nothing right now. Who is
Sugar
it?
Ray.
Sugar Ray. Ah, wow. Yeah, I forgot all about those guys.
So,
Oof.
dude, yeah, they're God, a lot of their stuff is god awful too. That said, I bought the next two albums after that album came out that had Fly on it,
Wow.
because someone gave me that album, and I was like, oh, okay, so if this is what the rest of their stuff sounds like, and they're only putting this stuff on the radio, then I want to hear what their next album sounds like, and maybe it'll be more of this stuff where it's this cool stuff, and then it'll have the one crappy song gets played on the radio. No, it was not. They went the complete opposite direction, but it was poppy catchy stuff, and I liked it, and I still like it. But oh my god, if they would have, I don't know. And I guess I gotta say too, I gotta, I don't know, man, I gotta say for 311 again, I do like some of their stuff, but I just feel like they're just so overrated. So
Yeah,
overrated.
I think that's completely a fair assessment. Again, direct your hate mail over to our Twitter at Noise Brigade Pod. But
Yeah, and our Facebook page.
yes, we have that now too, so we can get hated on both major social media.
Yeah,
sites.
and you can leave us voicemail or voice messages.
That's right. So check out our feeds. Make sure you can do that.
Yeah. So now all right. So I got to go on to worst song. Again, this is going to get some major hate, and you might even hang up on me right now. Sweet Caroline.
Yeah. No, I won't hang up on that one. Look, there's not a person on the planet that doesn't know the words to the Neil Diamond classic.
This is true. And see, what sucks is being down here. So, that's a huge song in Boston.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Balls, Red Sox. Yeah.
Well, down here, being surrounded by Red Sox fans and Patriots fans and Bruins fans and Celtics fans, whenever you're out at the bar, you can pretty much count on somebody playing that damn song. And I'm just so damn tired of hearing it in the stupid Boston accent. Come at me, Boston. Do it. You won't.
Yeah, the dude, and I think that's a fair thing for, you're probably not the only person that has that. I think certain songs like that, they just get so overplayed over time, that are classic songs.
Oh, even worse. You know what? Strike that from no, keep that on the record. Also, I apologize to the Mighty Mighty Bosstones because I realized too that most of my favorite bands are from Boston. So Dropkick, Mighty Mighty Bosstones, Aerosmith. So maybe I should ease up on Boston a little bit, but Hotel California.
Ooh, all right. See, another great band. But yeah, you're right. Overplayed.
Yeah.
Now that there is um, the Spanish version, right? In Big Lebowski.
Yes.
Yeah. Now I think that's a great song, um, but yeah, no, and you could think about these. One of the ones I always think about that it just kind of like to me overplayed, "More Than a Feeling" by Boston. That just kind of triggered in my head whenever you said, not
Oh man.
just overplayed to me. I'm not going to say I hate the song,
Okay.
but I'm not, just one of those things. It's like, yeah, it pops up in my list occasionally, and yeah, I'll listen to it every once in a while. But
Gotcha.
like, it's in that, to me, in that level for me anyway. It's like, I've heard it so many times, because it's like one of those songs that like shows up in movies every so often, and because it's
Well, one of my favorite episodes of Scrubs is almost based around that song. So I have a huge amount of love for that song. That it's that and Poison by Belle Biv DeVoe play a huge role in that episode because they're doing an air band competition,
hmm
and that's the song that they get into the competition on.
I think part of the reason why I throw it like that for me, like I said, I don't hate the song, and it shows up in my auto plays every once in a while because I like a lot of the a lot of similar things. Was I believe it was in one of the iterations of Guitar Hero,
Yes, it
and
was.
yeah, and I remember just having to hear it over and over and over and over and over again. After trying to play it and stuff, and it was like, uh, you know, I think that's part of it too for me. Sometimes it's like I just get a little burnt, and then like I get something stuck in my head where it's like, uh, you know, but whatever. I digress. All right, what we got? What's next after music?
So let's move on. We've got 3 categories left.
All right,
So this brings us into the world of movies.
all
So
right.
the first question is going to be, and you can do this. It's actor overall. Who is your least favorite actor ever? And it can be TV shows, movies, whatever.
Okay. Least favorite actor. Do you have one off the top of your head?
Um, I do, and it's it's weird. It's I have two. I have
I want to hear. Yeah, if you've got a couple, because I'm kind of stewing on this. I've got more of the least favorite movie in my
okay.
mind, but the actor that is in that movie I don't hate. So,
Gotcha.
um, yeah, go ahead. So who are your people here?
So, and it's gonna sound bad, and it's not even necessarily that I don't like their acting, but I just can't buy them in some of the roles they get put in. And it's going to be Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Now, Tom Cruise, love him in certain movies, in certain roles. Love
Mm-hmm.
him as Maverick in Top Gun. Okay. He was great in Days of Thunder. Love him, super love him in Tropic Thunder as Les Grossman. Like,
Yes. No. Agreed. Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. I agree that too. Yep.
His cameo in Austin Powers was great. But and the one I'll point to as where he loses me is in the Jack Reacher movies. Because Jack Reacher in the book is this big hulking dude. And Tom Cruise is not intimidating in the least. He's what, 5 foot nothing? Yeah, he's
Yeah.
ripped,
He's
but
short guy. Yeah.
I'm not scared of him. And so sometimes it's hard for me to buy him. Like I buy him in the more intellectual roles, I buy him in certain roles, but there's just something about him. I just, you know. And then the other one is going to be his brother in Scientology, John Travolta. And John Travolta in certain things, again, fantastic. But by and large, whenever I think of John Travolta now, I think of Battlefield Earth.
Yeah, John Travolta, it's funny. I like him in Swordfish.
Yes,
Um, and Face Off was pretty good.
right. Like there's
You know,
certain things that he's
yeah,
really good at.
he had a pretty good run there in the 90s into the early 2000s.
Broken Arrow.
Broken Arrow is another good one. Yeah. Yeah, I can understand that. I'm not a huge Travolta fan, but I get that.
So I mean, that's kind of where I go with it. I'm sure if I sat down and gave it a lot more thought and went through some IMDb stuff, I could come up with some people that are like legitimately awful actors that I can't stand.
Yeah.
Um, but that's where, oh, no, nope, got it. And I don't know how this slipped my head. I got to ask you a question. What's in the box?
Oh, Brad Pitt.
No, no, what's in the box?
Oh, Gwyneth Paltrow.
Exactly. I hate her. That was my favorite role she's ever done because her head ended up in a box. Cannot stand her. Anything she's in, like she almost even ruined Iron Man for me and like the Marvel universe because she's in it.
She's
Like,
very there's not a lot of emotion with her.
no,
She's very basic.
I preferred her head in the box. I'm not saying I'm going to kill her. I'm not threatening that. FBI, don't you be watching me, but I just cannot stand her. I'm so, ugh, she disgusts me.
So I thought of somebody that I just don't like at all, and I've never liked in anything ever.
Okay.
Andy Dick.
Really?
I don't like Andy Dick.
Okay.
I never thought he was funny. I just thought he was annoying. And I'm not saying that like I don't like some of the roles that he's in movies that I've liked over the years, that he's a good fit for because he is that annoying. I almost put it akin to um, like there's a reason why he is the way he is,
Okay.
for you to hate him almost. Like I think because he has that bad guy comedian type personality,
Right.
He's I mean, look at his name. Um, but I don't know. Some of the stuff to me, it's like I just don't care for just that style. So again, it's more my opinion.
Right.
Um, I just don't, doesn't jive with me.
Yeah.
But again, he shows up in movies that I like, so it's not like you know, not like he comes on the screen. I'm gonna like, oh, he's in this. I'm shutting it down,
Right.
because he's a bit player.
Exactly.
There's a reason why he's not starring in movies.
Right. Right.
So
Right. Yeah.
that's just that. So that's one I thought of. Um, the uh, the Travolta one though made me think of someone else, because you said the movie though, and I'm not gonna say worst, but certainly someone I'm not like the biggest fan of. You mentioned the movie Broken Arrow. So the actor that he plays along with in that, Christian Slater,
Really?
I've not a he's another one. He's very dry. Not I mean, I've never really been a big fan of his. So I'm not again that just kind of triggered a thing for me whenever you
Gotcha.
mentioned that movie. So
So Andy Dick, speaking of him, the only role I can think of with him in it that I really liked was his role in News Radio.
yeah, and see, I never got into that show, so I couldn't tell you one way or the other.
Yeah. So I mean,
And may have been, and it may be kind of because of Andy. I didn't
yeah.
watch it, so.
So all right, well, let's
But
let's go on to the movie. What's your least favorite movie? Your worst movie?
all right, and this is one that again I can draw some hate on this one, but I saw this movie in the theater with my mom, and my mom and I were avid moviegoers. I mean, we went and saw everything together, especially in the year that this movie came out. Um, like my mom was cool about taking me to see everything, so we would go every weekend, to see things. And she took me to see In the Mouth of Madness. It's the Sam Neill movie, the guy from Jurassic Park,
Yeah.
and it's a very heralded movie these days. I actually just was curious. I looked up the IMDb rating, and it's like at a 7.2.
Ooh.
Have you ever seen that movie?
No. No, but at a 7.2 and you didn't dig it?
Again, I was younger. I
Okay.
was 12, 13-ish, whenever. Because I'm assuming it was like made 94. I might have seen it in 95, whatever. So I was in that 12, 13 range. And, like I said, we had watched a lot of different things. I'd already been very privy to a lot of pretty crazy movies by that point in my life. So I had a pretty good excuse me, understanding of cinema, to that. It is just goofy. I didn't get it then. I can tell you, being almost 40 now, I could probably try to watch it again. I probably wouldn't get it now. Um, like, do you remember how goofy 12 Monkeys was? You remember seeing that movie?
I've actually never seen it.
Okay. 12 Monkeys is really weird. But the storyline makes sense. In the Mouth of Madness is like in that same vein, but to me, the storyline made no sense whatsoever. And it always sat on this plateau of me of like, just cannot watch movies. Always. It ran with me my entire life. So anytime the worst movie question is thrown out, I'm always going to answer with that movie. And I one of those things, I may have rewatched part of it over the last 20 years, but it's not good at all. I mean,
Hmm.
it's just really, really weird. Um, it, 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 I don't know. I'm not a fan of it. But I'll give you the quick little blurb of what that movie is. So yeah, I was 13 when it was released to the theater here in the States. But when horror novelist Sutter Kane goes missing, insurance investigator John Trent scrutinizes the claim made by his publisher. Um, and this is kind of funny. Charlton Heston's in it too. He endeavors to retrieve a yet to be released manuscript and ascertain the writer's whereabouts. So it's just this bizarre, like, I don't know, horror movie with, you have these pretty iconic people in there, but it just doesn't add up to me. Anyway,
All right.
so that's mine.
Okay. So here's mine. And I'm not trying to get political with this one, but when I give you my reasons why, it's going to sound a little political, but it was that bad. So when I had moved down here, there was a movie that came out called Harold and Kumar Escape from Guantanamo Bay, which I'm sure you're aware of,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I really wanted to see it and I thought it was hilarious. And so, when I moved down here, I knew two people, literally two people. They were a couple and they went to the movies with me to go see it. I thought it was hilarious. Apparently they thought it was terrible and they wanted to walk out because it was the worst thing that they had ever seen. And it was way too liberal for them. So in turn, they said, "Hey, we want you to come see a movie with us." And I said, "Okay, fine, I'll go see a movie." And I'm like, "What do you want to go see?" And they picked a movie called An American Carol. So have you ever heard of that one?
No.
So An American Carol basically is a spoof movie. It was actually done by the same guy who did Police Squad and some of those classic spoof movies from like the 70s and 80s. And what it's about is a Michael Moore stand-in in the guise of Kevin Farley, who was Chris Farley's brother. He plays this guy that's supposed to be Michael Moore, and his thing is he wants to abolish the 4th of July because it's representative of everything that is wrong with the United States. And basically he is supposed to portray every single Democrat's uh agenda.
Right.
And so it's just this this super conservative, like gays are bad. If you don't vote Republican, you're a pussy. Just dude, it just beats you over the head with if you're not a conservative, you're a traitor, essentially,
Hmm.
with just ham-fisted jokes. Just it just fell completely flat. And after we walked out, I was like, Jesus Christ. I was like, that movie was terrible. Like I literally did not laugh once. And I'm not against laughing at things that if it's funny, it's funny. I don't give a shit what side of the political spectrum it's on. I can laugh at anything as long as it's funny. I didn't laugh once. We walked out and I was like, God, that did you guys really like that? And they're like, yeah. And that's what you get for making us go see that terrible movie. And I was like, what are you
Mm.
talking about? And they're like, you made us go see that liberal piece of shit, Harold and Kumar. I'm like, whoa, easy.
The drug movie. I mean,
Yeah. Like,
that's
oh,
a Harold and Kumar is our generation's Cheech and Chong.
yeah,
I mean, if
exactly.
anyone, I'm not talking about politics on this at all, but if whatever, that's what that is.
Yeah.
If people never saw that for Harold and Kumar, then, don't get me wrong, that's obviously the Guantanamo and the Christmas ones are, oof, they're
Yeah.
not
They're
very.
not great.
I mean, they're watchable.
Yeah,
It's kind of like watching The Hangover 2 and 3.
exactly.
They're watchable.
Right.
But obviously they're sequels, and they just never gonna live up to the original. You know.
Right. And I'm not rushing out to watch that movie again, but it made me laugh.
Hmm.
You know, it, it, it just blew my mind like that. I don't know. I don't know. Let's get off of that though. Let's move on to the last one here. And this list has made me realize we really do need to do a follow up of the bests in each of these.
Yes, yes, yeah. That'll definitely be another episode.
Yeah.
So,
But
because we've kind of went on a little roller coaster here. Some of us has
yeah.
been sad. So yeah,
So
we're
let's
playing with emotions. Or we might get some hate mail
we
or some
might.
not mail.
Well, yeah,
Like
because
hate
nobody
hate
mails
media.
it.
No one mails anything anymore.
Yeah. I mean, they might. Well, maybe. I don't know, man. People are weird. They might stalk us online or something.
That's true.
I mean,
That's
I'd
true.
really hate for like a beautiful woman to stalk me and find out where I live and throw herself at me. That would be terrible. Anyway, uh, so let's finish off as we always should with well, we shouldn't finish with the worst beer, but let's go with beer. What's the worst beer you've ever had?
I've got this always comes to mind, the Royal Jamaican ginger beer,
Okay.
which some people love. And I like ginger, don't get me wrong. It works for me. I'll drink a ginger ale, no problem. Um, you know, it, that's a nice go-to, especially whenever you're like recovering.
Yes.
I'm not
Okay.
talking about just like from a hangover, like just from being sick. I mean, that is what it is.
Yeah.
Ginger beer and ginger ale are completely different things.
Oh yes. Yes, they are.
So I had the unfortunate thing of, and I've enjoyed plenty of different beers over the years, and this is something we can talk another time on. But I remember the only time I had this, and I'm notorious for, hey, I'm going to try it once. I'm going to at least drink the whole thing if I have a full one in front of me, because one, I don't want to waste it. So I'm not trying not to be wasteful. Two, I paid for it, and three, I'm a big boy, so I'm gonna try to go through it. It's
Right.
just my that's my mentality going into it. I took one sip of the Royal Jamaican ginger beer I had and was like, this is the most god awful thing, that I've ever tasted ever. It was just like ginger times 1,000. That flavor just so heavy to me.
Ugh.
So I'm sitting there with Danielle and Kyler. I was like, try this. And so we subsequently all, take sips of it. And I get the same exact reaction from both of them. So between the three of us, we basically got through a third of it. And there wasn't a single one of us that wanted to finish it. And I was like, okay, I guess so. This was like relatively early on in my tracking my beer, trials. But this was like the first one that really stuck out was like, I don't like it. Other people don't like it. This is going down the drain. So that's definitely definitely got to be it for me. I'm not a fan at all.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna go with one, and this one was super weird for me, and I'm wondering, and I'm willing to give it another shot. Um, because the first time I ever had it, it was outstanding. And that's why it was so shocking to me the second time I had it, and I thought it was god awful and possibly the worst beer I've ever had. And it's called Le Fin du Monde. It's by Unibrow.
Yeah, I've had Lefin. Yeah, and it's Lefin's not terrible, but yeah, what made you hate it like the next go around?
So I don't know if it had gotten skunked or what the deal was, but the first time I had it, I really, really liked it. I was out at a bar and somebody's like, yo, you got to try this beer. And I was like, okay, cool, I'll try it. And I was really, really into it. And then the next time I had it, it just, I can't even explain it, but it almost made me sick just drinking it.
Hmm.
Like
Um
it was almost like it was spicy. And I'm like,
yeah. Huh.
but it was, but it didn't taste like it did the first time I had it. And I didn't know, I don't know what the reasoning that it tasted so different was. And maybe it was just me, maybe it was just a bad batch, maybe it was, there's any number of things it could have been. But I absolutely loved it. And then I had it again and I hated it. Um and what's funny is I looked it up online um because I wanted to double check who made it. And it should the places that shows me I can buy it are West Deptford Buy Right and Homedale Buy Right. So I thought that was pretty funny since I'm nowhere near West Deptford or Homedale right now.
the okay, so here's my take. Again, we can maybe this will be a nice precursor into, I'll do a beer episode with you and you can slam questions at me or something. But um, you know, sometimes food that you eat with times it makes a big difference. And I recently had a conversation with my boss about this. Um, found something he really liked, but then he ate something uh, and had the same beer, and he said it just wasn't good. So I think that that a combination anyway. I think sometimes that has a bit to do with it. Um, Style as well, because Lafin is a Belgian triple. So uh, even as a you know beer nerd connoisseur that I am, sometimes that style can get really it's a little weird, particularly with temperature. So if it was even out of range, like, and I'm not saying that should have been, serve it at 55 degrees or 45 degrees or whatever. But if it just, if it's a little too warm, or as you said, maybe it was skunked, maybe it was just a bad batch. That stuff is probably produced so much that there's enough quality control to get away from that. But yeah, it's very, very feasible. Like, um, as much as I love Yingling, for example, one of the
Oh
most
god, yeah.
common beers, there's been plenty of times where I've had it where I know that didn't necessarily take care of it temperature wise, and yeah, you can tell a little bit of a difference.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's the thing. That's what I always say about getting Yingling not on draft when I'm out is I'm playing Russian roulette. I don't know if I'm gonna get a bad one or a good one.
Yep, yep, it's exactly right. And that's and that's the funny thing. I I can't necessarily say that everything's created equally that way because I certainly know the process on how that's all done. But they try to be as repetitive as they can, and sometimes it's just like I said, something you eat, or there's a temperature difference, or what. I also think sometimes too, like you have a couple other things, like more mentally, like you're kind of in your head, you're just not in the mood.
Yeah,
Or the other thing too, it's like you just, physically might be starting to get sick or something, and stuff just doesn't taste right.
yeah, that's
So,
true. So I'll have to give it another shot because Honestly, the first time I had it, I really enjoyed it. So
I'll tell you what, I will not be giving Royal Jamaican ginger beer another shot ever, because I know I just didn't like it from day one. And it's funny too because I know the ginger isn't that typically what goes into making the Moscow mules?
yeah, I believe so.
And you know, I couldn't tell you. I've had a couple of like beer, the Great Lakes out of Cleveland, Ohio. They make a Moscow Mule beer,
Ooh,
um, and it's okay. It's not bad, but it's got touch of ginger on it, and I see. Then I like that, you know, but it's that real heavy, and I just ugh, no thanks.
right.
So, but yeah, this has been fun. This was a great one. We'll have to we'll have to do a best of, and
Yeah.
then we'll have to maybe come up with 10 other worst of questions because I like this one.
Yeah, we'll have to do this again, and maybe we can down the line get Mark on here to talk about some beer too, and maybe Ryan, because Ryan's been. I know you brew a lot of your own, and Ryan's been brewing a lot of his own. So
Yeah, and I can guarantee you Ryan's way better than I am because it seems like he's been a lot more consistent at it than I have. So I'd love to chit chat with him.
yeah. So, all right. Well, that has been the episode, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I know we did. Stick around. I know next couple days we're going to be recording another episode on cryptocurrency with AJ. So we're gonna have some good information for you there. Make sure you check it out. Check us out on Twitter. Check us out on Facebook. Send us some messages through the voice app thing. And until next time, we have been the Noise Brigade.
Later on, everyone.